Ladies and gentlemen, a very sobering news, a very sad day for India. Former Prime Minister of India, Manmohan Singh, is no more. He passed away at the All India Institute of Medical Sciences. In fact, the hospital has given out a statement saying that he lost his consciousness while at home. And there were resuscitation efforts, but they failed. He was rushed to the emergency earlier in the evening at around 8 o'clock, and he was declared dead little before 10 in the night. A big sobering moment for India. I'm being joined at this point by Sachin Pilot. Sachin Pilot, my first question to you, how would you remember Dr. Manmohan Singh?
First of all, my condolences to his family and all his admirers and supporters. We will all miss him, not just as a politician, but as someone who really contributed immensely to India's growth. I think where we are today and what we are as a nation, I think a large part of it is because of what Dr. Singh did in 1991 when Narsimha Rao was Prime Minister. So I think his contributions in India's economic growth, India's stability, its policy making, its foreign policy, all had a lasting impact of his tenure. And we'll miss him because of he was a man who was wise, down to earth, humble, kind, and someone who allowed space for others. And he had friends and admirers across the political aisle.
Mr. Pilot, he's often referred to as the gentleman of Indian politics. When you look at your innumerable interactions with Dr. Manmohan Singh, is there anything that really you recount the most, particularly with you, of how he interacted with you and how things moved between the two of you?
I think he had worked with my late father, and he was someone who I known personally, besides being the Prime Minister or a politician. So he always maintained that relationship as a family, as a person. But, I think he led by example. His humility, his honesty, very learned man. He worked as RBI Governor, Finance Minister, and Prime Minister. So obviously, he had, achieved a lot in life, and yet he remained rooted to the ground, and he remained humble as ever. And he didn't change whether he was in opposition or in government, and that's a true hallmark of a gentleman. So in politics, we have people who tend to not look back once they've achieved something. So I remember him as a very, very grounded, rooted man who would always smile. I never saw him lose his temper. I never saw him agitated, always smiling. And despite difficult circumstances, crisis, all sorts of things going right or wrong, but he always held his cool. He was someone who was a true pleasure working with.
Mr. Pilot, often people remember Dr. Manmohan Singh as the economist politician, somebody who, of course, steered India through some very challenging economic times, particularly the liberalization period as well. But there was so much more to what he did as well, including the right to education that his government really steered. Mr. Pilot, there's one thing that really everybody remembers, the two things that he really spoke towards the end of his tenure. One, when he says history would be kinder to him, and second, that his life and his tenure is like open book. How do you look at these two statements today?
Both are true. I mean, in his long political career, he had held the highest position in the land and not a speck of allegation on him personally. I think his honesty is beyond doubt. And that's, I think, a true earning for a politician in his life. And it's also true that history will be kinder to him because at the time when he quit office, a lot of allegations and, finger pointing happened. But Dr. Singh was someone who, I think, with his true dedication and hard work, proved all his critics wrong. He came up and did the right thing for the country. He did not compromise on the interest of the nation. And for him, country was first. Every policy, every action of his government was aimed at strengthening the country and its economy. So we owe him a great deal.
Mr. Pilot, thank you very much for joining us. Thank you very much for sharing your tribute with Mirror Now. I believe you're also getting in a reaction from Harish Rawat. Let's listen in.
जिनकी बुद्धिमत्ता ने भारत को एक बड़ी आर्थिक शक्ति बनने के रास्ते पर डाला जब वो वित्त मंत्री थे। उस समय भी जो निर्णय उन्होंने लिए, वो निर्णय एक साहसिक वित्त मंत्री ही ले सकता था और साहसिक प्रधानमंत्री के सानिध्य में ले सकता था, और वो निर्णय डॉक्टर मनमोहन सिंह जी ने लिए और देश जब बर्बादी के कगार पर था आर्थिक रूप से, उससे बाहर निकल करके आया और आगे के रास्ते बने। जब वो प्रधानमंत्री बने तो उन्होंने आर्थिक रूप से भारत को दृढ़ बनाने की अपनी नीतियों को तो क्रियान्वित किया ही किया, उसके साथ साथ आम जन को भी अधिकार दिया। सार्वजनिक जीवन में स्वच्छता की बात जो करते हैं, उनके कालखंड, उनके कार्यकाल में आरटीआई, उनके कालखंड में ये मनी लॉन्ड्रिंग के खिलाफ जो कानून है, सख्त कानून, वो उनकी देन है, उनकी सरकार की देन है। डॉक्टर मनमोहन सिंह जी ने कई अधिकारों से, लगभग आधा दर्जन अधिकारों को देख करके जनता को, सामान्य जन को अधिकारित किया, जिसमें सूचना के अधिकार के साथ साथ काम का अधिकार, शिक्षा का अधिकार, चिकित्सा का अधिकार, वन अधिकार, भोजन का अधिकार, मैं किन किन अधिकारों का
Right. Right. There are tributes pouring in from all quarters, including the political detractors for that matter. Prime Minister of India, Narendra Modi, has also paid his tribute. I'm being joined by Hardeep Singh Puri at this point. Good evening, sir. A big loss for India. How would you remember Dr. Manmohan Singh?
No, the loss is immense. I mean, his was a life which, if you trace back, humble origins. He did exceptionally well as a student, studied in the UK. During his long career, he served with great distinction in many capacities in the finance ministry as chief economic advisor, later as secretary in the finance ministry. He was governor of the central bank, the Reserve Bank, later on as finance minister. And that was the period during which the economic liberalization processes received an impetus. We acquired, in keeping with the changing times, more outward-oriented postures. And finally, as prime minister, I think between 2004 and 14, therefore, I think his loss, both as an individual and his contribution. I mean, he was a very cerebral person, very thoughtful, a tall statesman, a visionary. And even though he was ailing for some time, but that does not in any way minimize the contribution he made right till the end. He was a loyal congressman. He supported the Congress dispensation of the day. And in somewhat difficult circumstances, I think he made a very valuable contribution. And I think the nation will remember him for that.
Mr. Hardeep Singh Puri, you as well as Dr. Manmohan Singh both were part of an era of politics where political divide obviously was sharp. The ideological divide was always sharp, but a very parliamentarian behavior, exchange of ideas and warmth off the floor and on the floor was always on record as well. Anything that stands out for you, particularly in your numerous exchanges and interactions with the former Prime Minister of India?
Well, I can tell you at a personal level, my own interactions with him throughout a long, several decades, I always found him a person who was very thoughtful, full of humility, and he was able to provide guidance at a very crucial and a difficult time in our evolution. In Parliament, I think he exercised restraint, and I think that's the kind of restraint which one misses these days. And the politics being divisive, I don't think is a new factor. But what is new is the fact that the level, I would say the decibel level. Manmohan Singh ji will always be remembered for, a softer approach. And I think the Congress party, at the end of the day, it was evolving. And, the fact of the matter is that in the situation which he inherited in 2004 to become Prime Minister, he was able to reconcile the different forces which were there within the Congress party and the country, and provided leadership. And I think his personal relationship with all the political leaders, both within the Congress party and in the rest of the government, both whilst he was in office and outside, was something that will be long remembered for the dignity that he brought to his office and all the posts that he served in with great distinction.
Mr. Hardeep Singh Puri, thank you very much for your time and for sharing your tribute for a statesman that India will miss, but his politics and his work certainly living on with what India is at today. Well, as I said, former Prime Minister Manmohan Singh was not only a statesman, a former Prime Minister who was remembered for liberalization, but he was also remembered for several other important landmark schemes, including the National Rural Health Mission, as well as the right to education. We must remember that post-demonetization, former Prime Minister himself had been a very important critique, a frontrunner at that, for what demonetization meant for India as a country. There have been tributes that have been coming in. Prime Minister Modi has mourned the loss of one of its most distinguished leaders, Dr. Manmohan Singh ji. Rising from humble origins, he rose to become a respected economist. He served in various government positions as well, including as finance minister, leaving a strong imprint on our economic policy over the years. His intervention in Parliament was also insightful. There are also tributes which have come in from different leaders, including Priyanka Gandhi Vadra, who has referred to him as a gentleman of his times and the politics that he stood for. Let's listen in to reactions that are coming in. All right. Before we go into reactions, let's listen in to that very important statement that everybody remembers of Manmohan Singh, where he said, history will be kinder to him.
I honestly believe that history will be kinder to me than the contemporary media or for that matter, the opposition parties in Parliament. I cannot, I think, divulge all the things that take place in the cabinet system of a government. I think, taking into account the circumstances and the compulsions of a coalition polity, I have done as best as I could do under the circumstances.
Well, Priyanka Gandhi Vadra has gone on to say that few people in politics inspire the kind of respect that Sardar Manmohan Singh ji did. His honesty will always be an inspiration for us, and he will forever stand tall among those who truly love this country as someone who remains steadfast in his commitment to serve the nation despite being subjected to unfair and deeply personal attacks by his opponents. He was genuinely egalitarian, wise, strong-willed and courageous until the end, a uniquely dignified and gentle man in the rough world of politics. In fact, it was in 2014, amid a lot of criticism for the then Prime Minister Manmohan Singh, he went on to say that he believes he was not a weak Prime Minister, and he did a job well, and he did a job to his best. That's what Manmohan Singh had said at that time. A big loss for India. People across the political line, for that matter, going ahead, across the ideological divide, remembering the former Prime Minister as somebody who steered India through some very challenging times. in terms of not only the economy, but also in terms of policy, whether it be the nuclear deals that India struck under the Prime Minister, the then Prime Minister, or for that matter, whether it be the liberalization that he steered the country through. Well, there have been people who have been calling in. They have been talking about their experiences, about how they look at Prime Minister Manmohan Singh, the then Prime Minister Manmohan Singh. Remember, in 2019, he had said that more than any other period of human history, the need for unity of thought and action today is the most urgent. He had also played a very important role, and he had said that if I can succeed in normalizing relations between India and Pakistan as they should prevail between two normal states, I would consider my job well done. Well, India and Pakistan are quite far from that, but Prime Minister Manmohan Singh and his leadership being remembered across political lines for that matter. Let's listen in to reactions that are coming in.
कारणावर सोडलेली आहे. त्यांना जग, त्यांना मानवता, नेहमी एक चांगला व्यक्ती, एक चांगला प्रशासक, एक चांगला राजकारणी, निष्कलंक राजकारणी म्हणून आठवणीत ठेवली.
देश के पूर्व प्रधानमंत्री मनमोहन सिंह जी का निधन हुआ है, क्या कहेंगे, क्या है आपकी?
ये बहुत बड़ा लॉस है. जिस तरह से उन्होंने देश को आर्थिक संकटों से उभारा था, चाहे वो
Okay, I'm being joined at this point by Anand Sharma. Very good evening, Anand Sharma. Big loss for India. How do you remember Prime Minister, the then Prime Minister Manmohan Singh? What stays on with you when it comes to his legacy and his leadership?
Well, his legacy is far too big, which will always be remembered by a grateful nation. From the economic transformation to India's reintegration with the global nuclear mainstream, the Indo-US nuclear agreement, India's acceptance in the nuclear supply group, his leadership, his steely resolve, when he withstood all opposition from within the UPA and from the opposition led by the BJP. It went to the wire, but he stood firm. And I remember those moments when he said, I'm committed to India's future, its security, its sovereignty. It doesn't matter whether I remain as PM or not. These were these words which will always inspire me. He also guided the world, which is acknowledged by President Obama and British Prime Minister Gordon Brown, and among other leaders. He had undergone a beating heart surgery because he had a heart surgery earlier. He chose to have it in AIMS in Delhi.
Anybody who knows how the former Prime Minister led the country would only have admiration, despite the political detractors having their own versions of how they did not agree with what Manmohan Singh did. But would you say, with the passing away of Manmohan Singh, it's an end of an era in Indian politics, and the kind of a gentleman politics that he was often referred to have as propagated?
Who are you speaking to? Hello?
Mr. Anand Sharma, would you agree that irrespective of the ideological divide, it's possibly an end of an era of politics, the style, the tone, particularly what many would refer to as a gentleman politics? I think we have lost Mr. Anand Sharma's line. This is the breaking news that's coming in that we have been following very closely. Remember, Congress leaders have already started coming in and reaching the All India Institute of Medical Sciences. Several leaders are reaching there. We'll have to wait and see what the arrangements are going to be, particularly for people across the country and not just politicians to pay their tribute to the former Prime Minister of India. That's something that we are still waiting for. But a very quick recap on what really happened to him. This is what the AIIMS hospital in Delhi has put on record, that he did lose his consciousness while at home on 26th of December, and he was rushed into the AIIMS emergency wing after resuscitation attempts completely failed. So that's the information that we have. There have been tributes that have been pouring in, whether it be the Lok Sabha Speaker Om Birla, who remembers that apart from being an eminent economist and an enlightened politician, he will always be remembered for his gentle and simple behavior, something that possibly every politician has been talking about. P. Chidambaram has gone on to say that life and work of Manmohan Singh and the period from 1991 till 2014 will be a golden chapter in the history of India. Rahul Gandhi has said he's lost a mentor and a guide. Mallikarjun Kharge has gone on to say that undoubtedly history shall judge you kindly, Dr. Manmohan Singh. This, of course, is also a reference to a very historic statement that he had made in the parliament amid a lot of criticism that he was facing, that history would be kinder to him. He'd also gone on to say that his life and tenure have been an open book. And before we end this bulletin, as I was making references to what Manmohan Singh had famously said, that history would be kinder, let's very quickly listen in to that excerpt.
I honestly believe that history will be kinder to me than the contemporary media or for that matter, the opposition parties in parliament. I cannot, I think, divulge all the things that take place in the cabinet system of government. I think, taking into account the circumstances and the compulsions of a coalition polity, I have done as best as I could do under the circumstances.